You're live.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Senator Shelley Heddleman, and I am co-chair along with Delegate Jared Solomon, who unfortunately it looks like will probably not be able to join us this afternoon, unfortunately, of the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. It is Wednesday, November 19th, and we are here to have presentations by the team at OLA. And we will begin with a presentation on the Special Investigation Unit. So welcome and thank you for joining us. I will turn it over to Brian Tannen.
Good afternoon. For the record, Brian Tannen, your legislative auditor. Today we have three different presentations, the first of which will be on our Special Investigation Unit. I'm happy to introduce Josh Adler, who's the director overseeing the Special Investigation Unit, and Joe McWilliams, who leads the unit and will be doing the majority of the presentation. It's been a very busy year. Feels like I say that a lot, but in particular related to this unit, they've been incredibly busy, both with two special reports and through activity throughout our other audits, some of which you may have heard as part of other presentations, but most of which you have not. And I think Joe's going to do a good job summarizing both of those investigations and touching upon all the specific things that we've done while giving you some of the statistics about the hotline itself over the course of the past year. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, members of the committee. I will share the presentation. So again, my name is Joe McWilliams. I'm the Special Investigation Manager.
Are you there?
Occur because of the lack or override of internal controls. So we don't recommend stronger internal
Yeah,
controls.
I'm sorry. If you could start over with we weren't able to hear part of it. Sorry. I'm sorry. Is everybody seeing the presentation?
We're not. Joe, I'm going to
Oh.
recommend. Joe, I'm going to recommend that I share the presentation, and you just do the talking, and it may help your streaming. Okay.
Brian, would you like me to give the presentation?
I would wait 1 minute. I'm trying to share the screen.
Sorry, if anybody from the public is watching, we're having some technical glitches. We'll be right with you.
Joe, are you on? All right. Looks like Joe is having some technical issues. So Josh, if you don't mind.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Adler. I'm Director of the Special Investigation Unit. It's good timing for the hearing today because it's Fraud Awareness Week. Billions of dollars are lost each year due to fraud, and it impacts everyone. At OLA, we're fortunate to be in a position to help prevent and detect fraud through our audits and investigations. Agencies may not like our recommendations and our findings, but the reason why we have them is to, without existing controls, fraud is more likely to occur. Next slide, please. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Back to slide 2. OLA established its fraud, waste, and abuse hotline in 2003 at the request of the legislature. The hotline was staffed with auditors who would answer calls and investigate allegations. In early 2020, OLA established its Fraud Investigation Unit. And in 2024, the name was changed to the Special Investigation Unit to better reflect the activities of the unit. The SIU is staffed with professionals who have the technical expertise, training, and most importantly, the passion for detecting, stopping, and preventing fraud in state government. The hotline has evolved since 2003. It's no longer just an auditor answering calls and conducting periodic investigations. Its role is expanded to include activities such as fraud training, risk assessments, and support for OLA auditors reviewing allegations and other high-risk matters. That's why the SIU was established. Its activities are generally divided into administrative and investigation operations. Administrative operations include the day-to-day fraud hotline, administration, allegation, due diligence, and outreach and education. Investigation operations are where we focus most of our resources. And that include, I'm sorry.
Joe's back on if you want to try.
Oh, great. Okay. Joe, I'm up to slide 4.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Let me try sharing again.
I'm sharing, Joe. Just
You are? Okay.
sharing.
All right. So we'll, I'm not sure where exactly Josh left off.
Start at slide 4, please.
Okay. So while the majority of the SIU's time is focused on investigative operations, the administration of our hotline is still our most vital function. Studies have consistently shown that fraud hotlines are the best tool to detect fraud. According to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, 44% of frauds in government were detected by hotline tips, and median losses by entities with fraud hotlines were reduced by 50%. To help bring more awareness to our hotline, members of this committee sponsored legislation in 2021 that required agencies to display our hotline posters in their buildings, post a link to our fraud hotline on their website, and distribute information regarding our hotline to their employees. Next slide, please. We receive allegations by phone, through our website, by mail, and from OLA auditors when they identify something during their audits. We have a team of excellent auditors who handle hotline calls during regular business hours, and all allegations are evaluated by investigative auditors who are certified fraud examiners. Depending on the nature of the allegations, we may decide to investigate them during our regular audit of an agency or as a separate special review. We may refer them to applicable agencies for appropriate action, or we may decide not to pursue an allegation further if there wasn't sufficient information provided by the tipster. Next slide. We receive allegations on a variety of topics, many of which don't fall within OLA's purview. Regardless, we strive to be a valuable resource for all callers. Although we may not handle a particular allegation, we understand it's a difficult situation for the caller, and we do our best to provide guidance. And sometimes that means referring them to a different agency for help. For example, when someone from the public calls because their identity has been stolen, they don't know what to do, so we refer them to the Office of the Attorney General's Identity Theft Unit. Next slide. Prior to 2022, our hotline received around 400 to 500 allegations per year. You'll notice a significant increase in the number of calls beginning in 2022. This is a credit to your support with the legislation I previously mentioned that helped us increase awareness of our hotline. While the newness has worn off a little bit and we've seen some decline in the number of calls, we're still receiving over double the calls that we received prior to 2022 and over 5 times more than we were expecting when the hotline was established. Next slide. In addition to the special investigations and other findings I'll highlight, the SIU provided support on over 30 other audits. We helped develop procedures to address allegations. We analyze transactions to identify fraud indicators. We perform specialized research. We do anything we can to help our audit teams produce effective results. I believe this is one of the SIU's most impactful functions. We all have the same mission. The SIU team is just a little unique because we're constantly thinking about fraud, how we can find it, and what we can do to prevent it. Our investigations may occur as part of our regular audits or as separate special reviews. As Brian mentioned, we've issued 2 reports from special reviews and had findings related to allegations in 8 other reports. It's important for us to report on questionable activity, but as I previously mentioned, more than half of fraud cases occur because of a lack of internal controls. That's why it's just as important for us to make recommendations that help prevent fraud and improve state operations. So while some of these reports include referrals to the Office of the Attorney General's Criminal Division or State Ethics Commission, all of them include recommendations to improve procedures and controls. Next slide. The first report I'll discuss is our special review of the Office of the Register of Wills for Baltimore City. We received allegations that the office wasted taxpayer funds on unnecessary promotional items and media, such as commercials, that the office only procured goods and services from vendors that were known personally by a management employee, and that the office had 2 employees on the payroll that did not come to work. Our review substantiated parts of the allegations and identified issues with procedures and controls in matters that we referred to the State Ethics Commission. Finding 1 describes issues with the office's procurement practices. We found that the office did not consolidate multiple procurements from the same vendors, including media and promotional items, circumventing competitive procurement and approval requirements. From January 2017 through October of 2024, the office made 1,749 payments for office expenses, totaling about $2.6 million. 1,725 of these transactions, totaling $2.3 million, were individually valued at $5,000 or less. 5,000 is an important number because procurements over this amount require a competitive procurement process. Of the 75 payments we tested, 74 payments totaling $266,000 were not consolidated and were potentially split to circumvent competitive requirements. For example, in one fiscal year, the office made 23 payments totaling $66,000 to one vendor for media production services, each of which was less than $5,000. So while we couldn't substantiate the allegation that procurements were only awarded to vendors known personally by a management employee, by not consolidating these procurements, the office was able to select vendors to provide goods and services without conducting a competitive procurement process and obtaining approvals from the Office of the Comptroller. Next slide. Finding 2 relates to the office's expenditures for media and promotional items. Our review found that there was no documentation showing that the office had assessed the need for $1.1 million spent on media and promotional item purchases, nor was there any documentation to demonstrate how these items would enhance the residents' knowledge of the office's mission. For example, the office spent $1,300 on 500 manicure sets printed with "Where there's a will, there's a way." But the manicure sets did not include the name of the office or any contact information. The office also paid $197,000 to produce an informational television show that was never aired. The office did not evaluate public interest in the show until after funds were expended to produce it. And those evaluations disclosed that there wasn't enough interest to warrant broadcasting the show publicly. So the office wasn't prohibited from purchasing media and promotional items, but the amount it spent on the items was significantly higher than 3 similar sized register of wills that we contacted. 1 did not purchase any promotional items. 1 spent $350 on pens, and 1 spent $2,500 on pens, calendars, and other items. Next slide. The last finding I'll discuss in this report is finding 3, which addresses concerns with one of the employees who was alleged to be on the payroll but not coming to work. We couldn't determine if the employee was routinely working at the office, but we did identify some other issues related to the hiring of this employee. The office could not readily document how the position was solicited, and the employee's personnel file didn't contain standard employment documents like an employment application, resume, position description. We also noted, based on some publicly available information, that the employee founded and operated a company that provided professional services to the office management employee who directly hired the employee. And this company continued to provide services to the management employee after the employee was hired by the office. The activity we identified during our review raised questions about a potential violation of state ethics law. So we referred the matters to the State Ethics Commission. I have to note that a referral to the commission does not mean that violations have taken place, and any final decision as to whether violations occurred would ultimately be made by the commission. Next slide. The next report I'll discuss is our special review of the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, or DAT. We received and substantiated an allegation regarding questionable transactions processed with a corporate purchasing card, or CPC. We also identified deficiencies with procedures and controls over CPC activity. DAT management told us they identified the questionable charges while preparing for an audit by the Comptroller's General Accounting Division. DAT terminated the cardholder after they identified at least $300 in payments for personal utilities, gas, and phone bills, but DAT did not document their methodology for their investigation, the specific transactions they tested, or the results of their review of those transactions. We reviewed the cardholder's transactions and found that DAT couldn't provide documentation such as itemized receipts to support 43% or $41,000 of the cardholder's transactions that were processed from May 2019 through August of 2024. We reviewed level 3 data and other information and noted that some of these purchases were questionable, like purchases of dog food and steaks. The cardholder also paid for 2 vacation rental properties in Ocean City totaling $6,800. 2 DAT management employees had directed their cardholder to pay for the rentals where they were attending a conference, but the properties were rented for 4 additional nights prior to the start of the conference, and each property was reserved for 2 adults and 2 children. Although DAT terminated the cardholder, they did not process the termination as terminated with prejudice, which means that the cardholder was eligible to be rehired by another state agency. We verified that the cardholder had not been rehired by another agency at the time of our review. DAT also did not refer the matter to the Office of the Attorney General's Criminal Division. The questionable activity went undetected for a long time because of DAT's deficiencies with procedures and controls over CPC activity. For example, DAT could not provide credit card documentation for 27 of the 68 months we reviewed for the cardholder. Supervisors also routinely approved their cardholders' logs despite the lack of supporting documentation. There was a month, May of 2024, that a supervisor approved, even though 16 of the 33 transactions had illegible or no supporting documentation. We referred this questionable activity to the Office of the Attorney General's Criminal Division. Again, a referral to the Criminal Division does not mean that a criminal act has occurred or that criminal charges will be filed. Next slide, please. The next report I'll discuss includes some of the findings at the Maryland African American Museum. The SIU identified these findings as part of the regular audit of the museum. Findings 2 and 3 are related to the museum's special events department. In finding 2, we noted that the museum did not take sufficient action when it identified questionable activity by a former special events employee related to parking revenue. The special events department would arrange for parking at a nearby garage when requested by customers who were renting the museum for an event. Customers had to prepay the museum for the parking, and the museum would then purchase the stickers on the customer's behalf. At the start of the audit, the museum told us that the special events employee had directed a customer to pay the employee rather than the museum's finance department for parking costs. The museum performed an investigation to see if there were any additional instances of the employee redirecting payments, but this investigation was not comprehensive. And as a result, they did not identify any additional questionable activity and did not refer the matter to the Attorney General's Criminal Division. Our review of available documentation identified 9 instances totaling about $5,900 when customers were instructed to pay the employee directly for parking instead of the museum. And for 4 of these instances totaling about $1,700, we identified correspondence from the employee to the customers confirming that the employee had received payments in cash. We couldn't determine if the employee remitted these cash payments to the museum because of deficiencies with procedures and controls over special events activities. And that brings us to finding number 3. The employee was able to redirect payments because the museum did not have sufficient accountability over its special events activities. The employee involved in the activity had unilateral control over events, including initiating rental contracts, invoicing customers, and receiving payments without the knowledge of the museum's finance department. This employee was also responsible for maintaining the museum's stock of prepaid parking stickers and was able to distribute them without any oversight because the museum did not maintain an inventory and require independent approval to issue the stickers. The museum also did not maintain a list of rental contracts, record invoices in its accounts receivable records, or record sufficient detail in its cash receipts records. So the museum could not determine how much was due from customers and if all amounts were received and deposited. Finding 4 is the last finding I'll discuss for the museum. We had noted that the museum did not ensure CPC transactions were properly supported, and as a result, they did not identify questionable payments made by 2 cardholders. Our testing identified 11 questionable payments made by 2 cardholders totaling about $4,200. For example, 8 payments totaling $4,000 related to one vendor had questionable supporting documentation, such as invoices that misspelled the vendor's name and an address that appeared questionable given the nature of the services provided. 2 of these payments were made to the cardholder's personal PayPal account, which the cardholder claimed were reimbursements for payments the cardholder made directly to the vendor. However, neither the cardholder nor the museum could provide sufficient documentation to support this assertion. There was also no documentation that the vendor provided any services to the museum. We referred the questionable activity in findings 2 and 4 to the Office of the Attorney General's Criminal Division. Again, a referral to the Criminal Division does not mean that a criminal act has actually occurred or that criminal charges will be filed. Next slide. This slide includes findings at St. Mary's College of Maryland and the Maryland Department of Agriculture. Finding 4 of the college report was identified by the SIU as part of the regular audit. We found that a management employee had secondary employment with a vendor that supplied certain athletic equipment to the college under 2 contracts totaling $187,000. The management employee supervised the employees who processed the procurements of these contracts, and we noted that there was no competitive procurement for one of the contracts, and there was no public solicitation for the other contract. Rather, the college directly solicited bids from 3 vendors, one of which declined to submit a bid, and the other had a history of providing poor quality products to the college. The relationship raised questions about the propriety of the procurements and the related payments and potentially violated state ethics law. So we recommended that the college refer the matter to the State Ethics Commission. Again, a referral to the commission does not mean that violations have actually taken place, and any final decision as to whether violations occurred would ultimately be made by the commission. The Department of Agriculture finding was identified by OLA's audit team during the regular audit. The audit team reviewed and substantiated certain aspects of an allegation involving the Rural Maryland Council and improper uses of funds by a grantee. For example, 13 grantees with awards totaling $461,000 had not submitted interim or final reports for periods ranging from 70 to 419 days after the report's due date. There was also no documentation that final reports were received and reviewed for 26 grant awards totaling $2.6 million. Now, this is significant because there was a lack of assurance that grantees used the funds in accordance with the grant agreement and whether any funds were required to be returned. Next slide. This slide includes findings at the Maryland Department of Aging and Department of Natural Resources. The findings at both of these agencies were identified based on allegations reviewed by OLA's audit teams during the regular audits. During the audit of Department of Aging, the audit team reviewed an allegation regarding payments for the Community for Life, and Naturally Occurring Retirement Community Grant programs. The audit team substantiated aspects of the allegation, and finding 3 noted that the department made payments to the Community Life Program grantees without obtaining documentation to support how the funds were used. This included questionable payments of $1 million made to a grantee in June of 2022 to initiate the program and enroll participants in 4 jurisdictions. $600,000 of this was for one jurisdiction that had no program participants as of April 2024, and $400,000 was for 3 jurisdictions that had a combined 17 participants as of September 2023. The Department of Natural Resources audit team reviewed and substantiated an allegation that DNR was not receiving all required funds under state law for the Mel Noland Woodland Incentive Fund. As described in finding 5 of the report, the audit team's review disclosed that DNR did not use available reports from the State Department of Assessments and Taxation to ensure the comptroller transferred the required revenue into the fund. For fiscal years 2020 to 2023, the comptroller did not transfer $430,000 of the $707,000 that it should have under state law. Next slide. This slide includes findings at the Maryland Insurance Administration and Maryland Department of Transportation's State Highway Administration. These findings were also identified based on allegations reviewed by OLA's audit teams during the regular audits. The Maryland Insurance Administration audit team reviewed an allegation that the agency did not cancel corporate purchasing cards for employees that had separated from the agency. The audit team substantiated the allegations, and their review identified 8 cardholders whose cards were canceled up to 467 days after the employees had separated from the agency. The State Highway Administration audit team reviewed an allegation that noted rapid growth in the federal funds receivable balance in recent years. The audit team substantiated the allegation and identified significant receivables that may not be collectible and may require the use of state general funds or transportation trust funds. An update on the SHA findings and other related issues will be addressed in our upcoming closeout audit report. Next slide. This slide is related to our September 2024 report on the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services Office of the Secretary. In that report, we had a finding that DPSCS did not consolidate procurements of certain goods and services, circumventing oversight and transparency. This deficiency contributed to questionable activity that the SIU reviewed during the audit, which we ultimately referred to the Office of the Attorney General's Criminal Division. Now, we did not include the results of our review of the questionable activity in the audit report because we did not want to compromise the Criminal Division's investigation. However, the Criminal Division acknowledged OLA's assistance in a recent press release because our referral contributed to a former DPSCS employee and a contractor pleading guilty to felony procurement fraud for work at certain facilities. According to the press release, the contractor provided the employee with multiple fake bids that appeared to come from competitors, and the employee used the fake bids to recommend awarding the contracts to the contractor, which had submitted lower bids. In exchange for the contracts, the contractor helped the employee obtain insurance payouts from fraudulent insurance claims related to properties that were owned by the employee or family members. This contractor had received over $375,000 from the state for work at the DPSCS facilities, and that included $51,000 for contracts awarded under the fraudulent billing scheme. So in this case, I can say the referral to the criminal division means that a criminal act has actually occurred. Next slide. So we are passionate about our work in the SIU, and I am fortunate to have an outstanding team working with me. I'd like to specifically mention the outstanding work on these findings by Haley Means, Thea Comento, Jordan Duke, and the audit teams. These results wouldn't be possible without their hard work and dedication. The SIU will continue to evolve and expand to ensure that it is a valuable resource to OLA and the legislature, and to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse in state government. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. McWilliams. We really appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for follow-up here. On the SDAT audit, I know that had been referred as well, but and the employee is no longer employed with the state, but was it clear that any supervisors, there were any actions taken against any of the supervisors there? And are the supervisors still there, I guess, at SDAT?
The supervisors are not there.
Okay.
So.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Ahrens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. When one of your first slides says we were experiencing 5 times what you predicted. Can you help me? How would you predict what fraud would be?
So that when the fraud hotline was initially established in 2003, the expectation was that the hotline would receive approximately 200 calls per year. Throughout the year since then, the actual call volume has significantly exceeded that amount. Prior to 2022, the average was 473 calls. Then with the bringing more awareness to the hotline, the calls volume significantly increased to where we are now, from 1,000 to almost 1,700 calls.
I don't think it was, to clarify, I don't, Delegate, I believe what Joe was saying was it was the call volume that was more than anticipated, not necessarily fraud.
Okay, well, you wouldn't have known what fraud was. You had a baseline of 400, I think, originally 473. But I guess you just figured we didn't have that much, or I don't know how you came to a number saying it was 5 times.
I just think initially back in 2003, when we created the hotline, I think what Joe's trying to say is we anticipated a much lower call volume than we did. And I guess it's a good thing that, people feel comfortable calling the hotline to share this information.
But it seems like even with the fraud line, I guess, our numbers aren't coming down dramatically. Usually when you put some sort of enforcement, if the enforcement's working, those call numbers will come down dramatically. And I guess for the people that may not be part of the General Assembly, if I were a constituent sitting out there listening to this and all the stories we heard about the dollars that were missing or misused or misguided, there's nothing to indicate that there's any consequence for this. We had to ask the question about a supervisor is no longer with it. Then we heard one story about somebody lost their job, but they were dismissed, but they were not eligible to come back to the state. And when I listened to the dollars, I don't know if you have a cumulative dollar amount for what you presented, a potential loss. Did anybody do that?
You're going to hear a presentation about some of the losses that we have identified, not necessarily from the the hotline. And I think there's a challenge because a lot of the times that we get an allegation, it may not be directly related to fraud. It could just be poor accounting practices. And so it does open the door for there to be potential waste and or abuse or potential conflict. And the most significant impact of the allegations, as Joe mentioned in his earlier comments, was the impact it has on our routine audits and identifying procedural deficiencies at these agencies. And those don't always correlate to a dollar amount.
Is there any way that we could, or the public could go back and find out some of these things that were referred to the Attorney General, the results of those investigations and the consequences? I know several years ago, we had a guy, somebody in one of the departments bought a bunch of office furniture and he lost his job. And that was highly publicized. Is there any way for constituents to go out there and find out just what is the state doing to recoup these dollars, to protect our dollars? Because it seems like when you have a credit card out there for over a year, you got to look at what are the dollars associated with that? What did we find on it? When I fill out an expense report, even for the state, if I have an expense report, I have to get pretty graphically detailed on what I did. And is that information available to you, the auditors?
So again, for when we know a conclusion, we're happy to share with it. Often we don't get that update, but the committee can send a letter to the criminal division asking them for an update on any of these cases. Unfortunately, if the case is ongoing, they're going to have to keep the results to themselves, but it's something that we could pursue offline.
Okay, is there anything, I asked, the other question was about the Attorney General, stuff that was given to the Attorney General. Is there anything we can look at the results of this, of the results of these investigations?
I don't have anything to share with you. We could reach out with them for the specific cases that we presented, that we had referred to them and asked them to give us a status that we could share with the committee.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, if there are not further questions at this moment, just want to confirm with our team and our staff that we do have 11 members attending. Is that right? 11 members online at the moment? Madeline? Okay, great. So that constitutes a quorum. So we are going to go into a closed session right now to discuss cybersecurity findings. And we will, because there are sensitive cybersecurity information that will be shared with the committee members. So can I call for a vote for that? All in favor of going into closed session?
You need a motion?
Motion?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we will do that. And just for the public, we will come back. There will be an opportunity to go through the rest of the agenda, the summary of audit reports and follow-up activity and recommendations for letters of concern. If folks are interested in checking back with us, we will continue the meeting after we've reviewed the cybersecurity. Thank you.